Have you ever been stuck in a relationship where you felt like you were giving everything, but something just wasn't right? What happens when the truth hits you like a ton of bricks, and you realize the love you thought was real was never love at all? Well, this is my story, a journey through lies, self-discovery, and a painful goodbye that changed everything. Stay with me, because this is a story you won't want to miss. In the days leading up to our wedding, I came across Daniel's old journal entries from when he was 16 years old. He wrote, "She's so overweight and it's horrible that she likes me. I'm hoping she'll stop now that I have a girlfriend." Staring at me as if his scathing doodles came to a sudden halt on May 13th, I had a hazy recollection of that day during our freshman year of college, when I gave up my weightlifting career to save him. The expression of relief on his face was palpable when I answered yes to his question last year. I couldn't help but think it was a true love at first, but now I see that it was simply him battling with. After years of feeling guilty and eventually deciding to return a debt, I decided to cut ties with the months after breaking off our engagement. I left Daniel while he waited outside my apartment on a cold night for his. His cheeks flushed as he beheld the man standing beside me. Might he be your new lover? That summer night, he lugged around a little shiver. Daniel had remained silent ever since he entered the room. I sat somewhat awkwardly to the side, bewildered as to what to do. Emma, his mother, leaned down and took my hand, her warmth evoking a mix of comfort and unease as she peered at me facing Daniel. Her voice strained with annoyance as she demanded, "Just say it, if you don't want to set a date for the engagement." "What are you waiting for now that you've been a couple for 7 years? Claire's you can't keep her waiting indefinitely, even though you've been more patient than anyone else." "I can't believe I raised someone like you." Her angry face betraying my false grin as I squeezed her hand. Subtly feigning indifference, she said, "It's all right, I can wait for him." Whispered, her voice quivering with anguish as she turned back to Daniel. "I refuse to let. Why would he treat you this way? I don't understand what's preventing him from proposing." Her tirade was abruptly cut short as Daniel, restless, flicked a lighter open and shut. With a stone-cold expression on his face, he finally cracked a dry, bitter laugh. "Get up suddenly." His actions forceful and decisive, and plotted out without looking back at me once he swung upstairs without warning. I mumbled something to Emma, attempting to hide the pain in my voice as a tightness grabbed my chest. I then swiftly followed. While Daniel was in the shower, he heard the sound of running water reverberating from the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my head in a jumble, staring at the floor for what seemed like an eternity. "Daniel, did you not muster the nerve to hear me speak, my voice scarcely audible?" I was trying to propose, but the sound of the waves drowned out our conversation for a while. After some time had passed, the water stopped and he opened the door, a towel slack-jawed about his waist. "Whatever you said about his hair, it was." His face was drenched as drops of water trickled down his angular features, following the contours of his trim physique as they rolled over his chest. Words were entangled on my tongue as a sudden flush, and a shiver ran up my spine. I clenched my jaw and silently counted to 10 as he began to get dressed, but I fumbled for words and looked away. "I'm done with you." He used his big hand to delicately ruffle my hair as a distraction from the sheep. I slowly blinked and saw him crouching down, completely dressed. "Can you open your eyes now? Are you trying to tell me something? Are you saying that you're not interested in getting married?" Don't overanalyze it, but he looked aside, stood up, and gathered his soiled garments. I wanted to suggest to Daniel that maybe we might consider getting married, but I knew he was lying. I wanted to say, "Please, we can reschedule the wedding. I am not in a hurry. We can wait until you are ready." But my voice choked up. Just a sharp ache. I couldn't remain in that room any longer. My chest felt too constricted. I sprang to my feet swiftly. "I'll simply visit." In a fit of annoyance, he reached across and grasped my hand as we slept in a separate room. He pressed his fingers against my chin, making me look directly into his. Sobbing uncontrollably, a look of growing irritation crossing his features. He was careless and cruel, and his remarks struck like a slap. "I've already agreed to marry you. What else could you possibly want from me?" In all these years we'd barely spoken, but tonight, perhaps it was Emma's prodding or his pent-up anger, he finally spoke to me like this. I went into shock as the sting of shame swept through me, and Daniel finally let his true feelings show. He pounced on me like wildfire, turned around, opened the door, and departed, leaving only a subtle aroma of his soap as a reminder of our recent talk. Same night, neither Daniel nor I brought it up again. In fact, neither of us even mentioned delaying the wedding. There was a change. He became more reticent and emotionally detached, even while selecting. Until I texted him at midnight, he showed little interest in the wedding dress. He was usually busy. Hours after he sent them, he was so preoccupied with celebrating Emma's birthday that he skipped home. Everyone tried to hide their embarrassment by laughing it off, but we all knew it was awkward. I pretended nothing was wrong as I ignored the weight in my chest, which was actually Daniel's silent protest against his mother, was mistaken, and diligently worked on my smile as if it were a skill I could master. However, a few weeks later, I awoke to discover he was deep in concentration staring at his phone. I tried to ask him why he wasn't asleep yet. He sat up, ready to speak, but he swiftly put down his phone, his expression turning somber as he... In that brief instant, I had seen it in a photo. Now I'll go to sleep. I turned my back on 17-year-old Monica and 17-year-old Daniel on his screen. The day Peter scowled at Daniel, I felt like I'd been thrown into cold water. None of my memories flooded back. Oh, I see. So what if he's seeing someone else? You'll never be better than Monica, will you? Words dragged out like blades, fat, nasty jokes in a voice dripping with disdain. What was I thinking? I was hoping that Daniel would eventually adore me if I could just keep going for a little longer. As I gaze up at the ceiling, tears welling up in my eyes, I can tell you, Monica was never forgotten. In an instant, the fragile resolve I had been holding on to crumbled. I no longer desired to get married. I desired to flee. After deciding Daniel, I racked my brain over the best time to say it. I lived with Daniel after graduating from high school because his mom, Emma, treated me with such kindness and compassion. Perhaps it was because they viewed me as a daughter and liked me, making it so difficult for me to tell them without upsetting them. We were all really looking forward to our wedding dress fitting, but Daniel canceled at the last minute, saying he had to work. I had never been a fan of his until our meeting after he began working at an advertising agency managing campaign tactics. Work so much that it required constant juggling of schedules, including late-night calls the morning, so when he said he was busy, I didn't disbelieve him. In fact, I felt oddly relieved, but Emma was afraid because furious that Daniel was still nursing a grudge from their last dispute, she stormed the dress fitting she had barely hung on the phone when I spotted her outside to call him, releasing a TI rage before I could intervene. "Clara, it's all right. We'll go find him." With a flushed face, she snatched her bag, took hold of my hand, and yanked me toward the door. As he will reveal to himself who, exactly, is more essential than being present with his fiancée to choose her bridal gown, he'd gone completely insane, and then it hit him. Monica was returning. No wonder he'd been so distracted recently. No wonder he'd said he was too busy to come today. It all made sense now when you're at your lowest point, laughing is sometimes the only option. Emma recoiled in fear as she heard "I should not be concerned, Clara." She drew me into an embrace while laughing bitterly. "Emma," I gently shoved her, "and I will take care of this so that he doesn't treat you badly." Far away, my voice steady but gentle. "Thank you. However, I must do this. Go upstairs, stand still for a while, and believe me, I'll handle it." I knelt down after reaching into my bag for my phone, which caused my hands to quiver and drop everything. Leaning on the foot of the bed, I took up the phone and dialed him without hesitating. The phone rang on multiple occasions prior to his pickup, there was deafening, frantic background noise. His voice was piercing and irritated. "Where were you?" He shifted to a more muted area, his voice mocking as he checked up on me. Entering that signature condescending tone, "Claire, is it truly necessary to proceed to this extent? Was it insufficient? I thought I had stated I would marry you. Now you're scolding me on top of having my mom yell at me." In a desperate attempt to regain my composure, I drilled my nails into my hand and asked, "Where are you?" "If you're interested in meeting up, I'm at 54th Street. Everything else is all right with me." He hesitated, then tacked on as an afterthought, because you're going to get the file folder out of my study desk. When the connection went dead, I glanced at the ceiling in an attempt to control my emotions. As a result, I seldom visited Daniel's study as he disliked my presence there. The stark black and white furnishings reflected his icy personality. The folder he had requested was sitting on the desk, far away and immaculately clean, easy to detect, yet when I reached for it, my eyes fell on a diary lying alongside it. Perhaps it's true that some people just have gut feelings about some things. I was warned not to open it, but I couldn't help but stare at I was on the verge of panic the second it was opened on August 29, 2015. My parents recently welcomed a new girl into the house, introducing herself as an athletic recruit. From now on, she will be living with us, and she is always. The scent of perspiration is so putrid that I went into shock when I recalled how hot it was. On that summer day, my parents were good friends with Emma, and I came to the Wilsons' house with all my possessions in tow. In order to facilitate my enrollment at a private high school, I had received an athletic scholarship that year. Daniel, dressed in a clean white t-shirt, was the one who opened the door when I asked Emma if I might stay with her family. He was so kind and helpful, he even carried my bags inside. His smile was wide and welcoming. Without hesitation, he turned around and inquired, "Clara, what's your name?" Said Shilly. He smiled again, placing my luggage down softly in the room they prepared for me. "Everything's ready for if you ever have any needs. All you have to do is ask my mom." She used to be kind, courteous, and amiable. Despite my nervousness and awkwardness, a tender feeling took root. I never believed on November 5, 2015, that he would think I was repulsive. Yet he keeps Is she actually into me? She's been gazing at me strangely, and he even bought me a present for my birthday. I gave Peter a handmade plush toy since he desired it. Stroking it caused me the willies on January 3, 2016, and I despise on March 7, 2016, she found herself the target of jokes about me and that pig. I swear she thinks she's the leading lady of a corny romance novel. My breath became shallow as I worried about how much longer she intended to remain here. My heart felt as if it had been plunged into icy water. Upon my arrival in Los Angeles, I found myself alone at school, with shaky hands that quivered as I turned the pages. Desired my company, with the exception of one weightlifting teammate who, on occasion, engaged in idle small talk. During my periods, Daniel was there for me, keeping an eye out for any signs of trouble. It felt natural for me to fall for Daniel, while others teased me and even helped me bandage my wounds. I never regretted loving him, even after I realized he didn't love me and I'd already resolved to leave him. Those handmade plush toys were made with materials that I had saved up from my meager savings when I was a kid. Before I could give it to him at a party, I spent weeks making it, taking it apart and trying again until it was perfect. I was about to retract it out of embarrassment as everyone watched, but Daniel smiled and delicately reinserted it. I appreciate the present box. He seemed sincere when he remarked, "I love it." As long as I was able to focus on what was important to me, I didn't care if Peter, his friend, made fun of me across the room. At 17 years old, I had no idea that Daniel would end up giving my present to Peter after saying he liked it. Had it thrown in the bin as soon as he departed, I failed to comprehend Peter's intense dislike of me until much later on, when I understood that my lack of attractiveness was the sole factor contributing to my status as a target. But at the time, I believed Daniel was unique, and I secretly harbored feelings for him as if they were delicate secrets, was exceptional simply because I lacked physical attractiveness. Upon admitting my sensations, I stuttered so terribly, I couldn't even finish a statement. Daniel had smiled warmly, like he was trying to be compassionate. He asked, what was he thinking at that moment? In response to my statement that I am not actively seeking a romantic partner at the moment. I leaned over, gagged, but nothing came up as a wave of nausea hit. Unexpected and unstoppable, tears streamed down my face as I clung to. I started reading the journal on April 9, 2016, and I'm hoping that my new girlfriend will finally, for the first time, I understood how I felt when people kept staring at me in that way, and I couldn't help but laugh. It's sad, because he could have just informed me how I felt. How cheap and useless. If he had simply been honest with me at any of those numerous occasions, I would have ended it all. When I saw that he was leaving notes like this behind, I would have left without answering the question of why there are so many considerate gestures. In my journal, the most recent entry was made on May 13th, the day Daniel received involved in a confrontation with a group of thugs over a matter of money. I had intervened to shield him from harm, and they had broken my arm as a result. Wrist injury put a stop to my weightlifting career, and shortly thereafter, Daniel severed his relationship with after Monica left for college. We lost touch permanently. I started paying more attention to When I started taking better care of my looks and my weight, things between Daniel and I began to improve. Maybe it was because of my gratitude. Due to my services to him, or perhaps it was only the ethereal, flattering light of the night when he appeared out of nowhere. He took hold of my hand and demanded, "Are you still interested in me?" I was so frightened that I averted my gaze, and then he kissed the back of my neck and kissed me. It was my first kiss, cool and faintly minty. The very next day, Daniel briefly mentioned that he and Emma are dating before taking me to visit her. Felt as if a burden had been removed from his shoulders, as if he were looking back. And I understood that my impression was correct. I had a startling clarity when I realized that his display of devotion was only his way of persuading himself that he was paying off a debt. To the address Daniel had given me upon my arrival, took a deep breath, and then proceeded to retrieve the folder and journal. While playing pool with Peter, Daniel's expression was expressionless, and he remained completely mute. "Hey Daniel," as usual, Peter couldn't help but stir things up. "You're not really attached, are you? God, I still remember when Monica was here. Why haven't you dumped Clara already? When I first laid eyes on her, all that extra weight and that hideous plush toy she had made for you, Daniel couldn't help but slam his sew. The door swung open, causing everyone to freeze, and Daniel's eyes widened in surprise. In a state of terror, but as soon as he saw it was only me, he calmed down and I proceeded. I humbly thanked him and then handed him the folder containing his paperwork. Paused, seemingly attempting to find the appropriate words, but when he laid eyes on the journal I was holding, I couldn't help but cry. "Daniel?" I threw the journal at him because my voice was rough and trembling. Was it fun? He remained motionless, his eyes displaying a flutter of fear as he extended his hand to his heart as Peter came in and shoved me hard as if to support me and console me. "Clara, what's wrong with you?" Wild without thinking, I struck him across the face, my hand trembling. "I'm talking to Daniel, who the hell do?" Despite my nervousness, my statements were direct and angry. "You've made the most of every opportunity I've given you throughout the years. To bring me down, you fat, ugly pig, aren't you sick of it yet?" "I am, so what if I was a weightlifter? I gained weight for my career. Is that meant to be humiliating? Who the hell are you to judge me? My own parents never commented on my weight, never critiqued how I looked. What gives you the right? You cling to me like a damn leech, hurling your cheap insults at me. If I didn't know better, I'd assume you were fixated on... I'm wondering if that's it. Perhaps you have feelings for me, which would explain your relentless pursuit of me." During this time, Peter was taken aback. He opened his lips slightly to speak, but nothing came out. I shoved Daniel when he tried to scoop me up in his arms. "Clara, calm down, I'm okay." I grabbed the journal from the floor and turned it over, making him read the words he had written. The more pale he got, the less audible his lip movement became. "Allow me to explain," I laughed. "Icy, cruel, Letten, break up Daniel." My eyes fixed on his, burning with hate. You make me queasy. In fact, I felt like throwing up just thinking about you, so I turned around and bolted out the door, never looking back. Daniel attempted to trail after me, but I abruptly halted and turned slightly, wondering why you would suddenly try to catch up to me. I insisted on continuing to walk, and with each stride he pulled me closer until he finally agreed to marry me. Farther away until I vanished from his sight, entirely following our confrontation. He then proceeded to spend the subsequent days. Staying away from me at home caused strain for everyone, but nobody had the courage to ask. My mom was the first person I informed. She wasn't shocked to hear the news and gently asked if I wanted to return home. I replied, "I haven't told Emma about the breakup yet." I need some time to think about my response. No matter what transpired between Daniel and me, Emma's goodwill had always been genuine. I didn't want to hurt her. Leaving my job wasn't an overnight decision, and starting again is never easy. After I hung up the phone, I gazed into the mirror for what seemed like an eternity. Perhaps it was the steady barrage of appealing, refined individuals that I'd gotten fastidious about my look somewhere along the way. I turned into what people casually called a pretty girl. But as I gazed into the mirror day after day, I witnessed a former self firmly grasping the barbell, knees bent, lowering into a squat. As the girl's routine gradually faded, the woman in front of me immaculately fabricated her clocking in and out of work on time every day. I felt better about my appearance, but I still wasn't happy. I had missed wearing workout clothes barefaced and carefree, living a life unburdened by decisions that matter most in life don't always boil down to this high-pressure, always-on city version. On the night I prepared a lavish supper, I had a sudden epiphany that I hadn't. I knew this separation had to happen because I aspired to be as unsure and fearful as Daniel. After supper, I broke the silence and whispered to Emma, "Emma, you'll never accept it." I informed her it was my decision, and Daniel and I ended our relationship before she could respond. Eyes flooded with tears quickly, I sought for her hand, resting my head lightly on her shoulder. My decision to leave my job is based on my disillusionment with him. And I know you love me, Emma, but you can't make me feel anything. I smiled at her in an effort to put her at ease. I have already submitted my resignation and will be returning home after the handover. If you ever miss me, come visit. You'll always be welcome. Emma whispered softly, her voice barely audible. She drew me into a passionate embrace while she sobbed quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks. Daniel, she cradled me in her arms for what felt like an eternity before finally whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry." "It's my deepest regret, Clara. I consoled her for far too long. Had I known the truth about him, I never would have damaged you." Holding her hand, assuring her it wasn't her fault Daniel found out I was going half a month later on my last day at work, I had already scheduled my flight for the following day at 10 a.m. "Returning to the time really is boring," he said, as he pounded on my door in the evening. Certain things, the agony I'd felt in the beginning had dissipated, replaced by something deeper indifference. "Don't worry, we'll part on," I said with a subtle smile, since there was nothing else to say. "I will maintain cordial relations with your mother and refrain from causing any problems. As a result, she will no longer exert any pressure on you." The door, our eyes met. He looked depleted. Hollow like sleep had been a stranger to him for days. He asked, "What time schedules your flight tomorrow? Can I take you to the airport?" "Do whatever you want with Daniel" drove me to the airport the day after I shut the door. I failed to refuse. It was the last time anyway. For Emma's sake, I didn't want things to get ugly. When we arrived, he handed me my tolerance was wearing thin, so I snapped at him for holding onto my bag as I reached for it. He shot him a scathing glance, his eyes narrowed, and he gradually relaxed his hold on him. I moved away without looking back, the first thing I did before touching him, and he mumbled something. I laughed softly but bitterly, and then left. The nicest part of our relationship ended when I returned home from the first flight, which was blocking his number and severing all ties. My hometown was so much slower and more serene than Los Angeles that all I did was sleep for 3 days straight. Once the wedding was called off, my relatives were concerned, but they didn't pry. Instead, they'd quietly remind me to leave the house and go for walks, as if being outside would mend a broken heart. After a couple of weeks, my aunt began to make an effort. My mom gently declined several attempts to set me up on blind dates, and I laughed it off until they finally gave up. I had saved up a substantial amount of money over the years, approximately $100,000, and had put the majority of it into savings. As I was contemplating my next move while high, I decided to invest a small portion. After hearing that I was returning to school, my buddy Becky contacted me to let me know that she was going to launch a social media channel. Come along with her, her plan was straightforward. A street-style show about befriending total strangers. When we ask random people if they're interested in creating new acquaintances, they record some information about themselves, and we pass that along to the next person. If both sides are interested, we arrange for them to meet. I gladly remarked that I had been considering my next career move and that her suggestion had struck a chord with me. I even put $10,000 into our startup fund right away, Becky, yelled, "This is it!" as she embraced me firmly and planted a series of hyperbolic kisses on my cheek. Given our combined efforts, there's absolutely no doubt that we will achieve our goals. Laughed out loud, feeling both frustrated and really joyful. Perhaps it was because a new life was about to begin. As things started to come together, it was less important if we were successful or not. What was important was that for the first time for quite some time, I was looking forward to what the future held. Once we were serious about started arranging our first shot, we chose a local university randomly questioning students on campus. The reaction was terrible, so we changed things up and went to an elementary school instead. Felt more refined being in the company of children, with their purity of heart and lack of inhibitions, makes all the hard things fade. Soon after we finished filming, Becky swiveled around to face me, a grin on her face, and said, "Feed me first." And with that, we headed off to find something to eat. Becky suddenly grabbed my hand, her voice filled with excitement. Clara looked standing nearby under the shady canopy of a tree was a dashing man with angular features and a black suit. With an air of effortless charm, he had been observing us for some time before. Seemingly mustering up his courage, he began to jog, covering up a subtle flush that's coloring his cheeks. "Are you guys involved in any sort of social networking project?" He said softly, putting out his phone toward me. His glance met mine, a little frightened. "But, okay, can we become acquainted?" I was still deciding how to react when my phone buzzed with 2 new messages, a number I didn't recognize. I opened them to see a photo. Daniel holding hands with Monica. The caption read, "There finally I didn't have to guess." It was Peter, that recognizable surge of, I felt queasy, but I was able to push through it by typing "not my business" instead. I immediately banned Peter's number when the message went out. Becky saw a change in my countenance, lowers his voice to a whisper and asks, "Are you all right?" He then proceeds to act like an idiot the moment the words left my mouth. I looked up at the guy standing in front of me and quickly added, "Not you." He chuckled. He casually smiled and reached for his phone once more. Could I possibly include it? Oh, I almost forgot to include your contact when he added it, almost as an afterthought. Per our previous correspondence, I am Brian, and I am writing to introduce myself. Came home to find my mom's voice trembling, as if trying to conceal something she wasn't willing to admit. It seems that my encounter with Brian was more than a mere coincidence. In fact, we had gone to the same middle school, curious. I rummaged through an old box until I found our graduation photo. It took me as I swiftly scanned the faces in the photo, until I find a small boy hiding in the corner, barely familiar with the man I'd met that day. I couldn't place him, and neither could my mother. Immediately sprang to the conclusion that Brian had been infatuated with you the whole time, she speculated. I couldn't help but chuckle. Mom, when fate brought you two back together like sparks shooting the second you met. Many romance books have you been reading after Daniel? I'd had my fill of misguided feelings I wasn't about to. Eventually, I found myself glancing at my phone, deciding whether or not to text Brian, and I couldn't help but romanticize everything. Turns out we were classmates in middle school. The message was reported as read nearly instantly, but he didn't reply immediately. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally said, "Yeah, I hope you're not offended." I couldn't help but smile as I composed my response. It's nice that his reply arrived soon. Should hang out more, I don't really have many friends around here. Over time, Brian became habitual of dropping by unannounced to offer assistance with the camera as Becky and I were filming. Finally, he just became our official cameraman. He had an easygoing charm, pleasant, active kind. He could converse, engaging in conversation with anyone, even elderly grandmothers, as if it were second nature. And my mom used to adore him. She nearly took him home for supper one day after we accidentally ran into each other while reviewing footage. I stole a quick look at him and whispered, "You're different from the first time we met." He blinked, obviously perplexed, as I continued. In my meaning, I was referring to his transformation from the prim and proper suit wearer to this carefree, optimistic version of himself. He giggled and stroked the back of his head. "Apologies, I just had this first thought." he said. First impressions used to be crucial, but now they're not, I playfully taunted as he drew near. A little, his eyes gleaming. Second impressions are more important now. And I wasn't really into the entire suit-wearing business type anyway. Eager to find love, I told Brian the truth when I learned he felt the same way about me. He didn't bother to contact me back that night. Instead, he drove directly to my apartment and texted me, "Look outside." Looking out the window, I noticed him standing there with a bundle of balloons which he released one by one. I retrieved a small note from my window and held it out to the last remaining star in the sky. "I'll wait for you there. We don't even need to date. Simply be friends." We're all clinging onto the same thread. There was a profound stillness in the air. I could see the man standing below, bathed in the moon's gentle, solitary light. Anxious, as if each second of hesitation were a nail in the coffin, but I managed to tie the balloon to my. When Brian saw the window smile and send the message, "Hey there, my friend," he smiled too. 2 months later, I got a message from Daniel he'd switched to a new number to contact me when I blocked him. He just changed it again one time. I was really irritated because I answered the phone without first checking the caller ID, and then there was complete silence. "Daniel, please stop bothering me." I finally snapped. His voice echoed through the halls, and "Clara, my mom misses you." Emma's name made me feel better. She had been phoning me frequently, and I was wondering when we might see her. She would send me texts, sharing fragments of her day photographs, and express her concern for my well-being whenever I failed to respond. All the meals she'd made, all dishes I liked, every time I saw those messages, my chest clenched, tears threatening to spill. It brought up a memory of how Mom would do the same whenever I arrived at their house, doing her best to make me feel at home. With her cooking when I got sick, she'd stay up all night taking care of me. I couldn't be cold to her, even if I hated. Despite my tone changing, Daniel persisted in asking whether we will have time soon. I just couldn't bring myself to be that cruel. I ended our conversation. "Aren't you back now? If you'd prefer, I can come get you right away." I couldn't help but let out a shiver as I overheard Monica's heavy and telling pause. "Is this how you handle every—" I paused to catch my breath since your girlfriends are constantly pursuing things that you don't have. "Daniel, can you not get how utterly absurd you sound?" My voice is firm and sharp. After that call, he became quiet. I assumed that was the end of it. Finally, but I didn't expect to run into Peter Bryan. A beautiful black Maybach drove up in front of us, the window rolled down, and my friend and I had just exited a cafe. My smile quickly faded as I beheld that familiar face, and Peter's sneer was unmistakable. "You have a new boyfriend, Clara." He was really condescending to Brian. He then turned back to face me, his grin expanding as he greeted Bree with a "Hey, man." Before he could complete his sentence, Brian's fist made contact with his face, causing me to gasp in shock. "You know what she used to look like?" Peter stumbled back furious and swung right back at him. Peter held the side of his face, his jaw clenched as he spat blood all over the sidewalk. I strode up to him, seized his collar by the fist, and yanked him down. I could hardly control my wrath as I drew nearer and locked eyes with Peter. I shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you?" His lips curved into the same smug. He grinned angrily and said, "Oh, I messed up." His mocking eyes sparkled as he asked, "What are you going to do about it?" Abruptly withdrew his hand from my grasp, letting go of his shirt as Peter straightened up, brushed off his wrinkles as if they didn't exist, and he smirked as he replied, "By the way, Daniel and Monica." He leant in slightly, lowering himself as if he is still hurting from their breakup. I decided to break the news to him face to face since I didn't think a text could adequately convey the seriousness in his voice. His jaw clenched in an overdone display of drama, and here I was, playing the role of the nice guy, just to receive punched by your new lover talk about misreading good intentions. I stared at him, expression blank, not giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. Finally, even Peter grew. Feeling uninterested in his monologue, I extended my hand to Brian. As if to ground us both, he blinked in surprise before swiftly regaining his composure and firmly gripping my fingers. All I wanted was for him to depart from that place. I failed to observe the subtle flush rising to Brian's ears or the abrupt change on Peter's face as his smugness shattering into something darker worse. Clara Peter yelled out again, his loud, piercing sound that sliced through the air as I pivoted to look into his eyes, which had taken on a peculiar blend of annoyance and something I didn't give a hoot about. "Why don't you simply reconcile with Daniel?" "I swear," he snapped. "If you do, I will cease my insults." I did not pause, flinch. I merely looked. I looked him square in the face and commanded, "Go away, I will never see your face again." Abandoned Peter, who was left with nothing more than a shattered ego, as I turned my back on him and pulled Brian along with me. Night, for the first time in months, I texted Daniel, "Can't you handle your dog?" Maybe it was the fury still seething. I recalled my powerful, broad-shouldered high school self in a dream that night, albeit it was just under my skin. Explain how, as a teenager, I was always the center of attention, come unprovoked, sharp as glass, and just as pointless boys would shove each other laughing and jeering, yet you don't. If you're seeking a confrontation, you should arm wrestle her instead of kissing her. It was quite amusing when, upon my return from the restroom, I noticed a female in our class who had her shoelaces undone. A gang of youngsters, usually up to no good, glanced at her exposed collarbone, their eyes filled with scorn, and something slimier that appearance. It made my skin crawl, a terrible sensation that prickled. I stepped up to one of the boys and stomped on his foot, getting all the way to my scalp. Without hesitation, I did it. Twisted in anger as he swung at me, but before his punch could land, Daniel moved in. He snatched the boy's hand midair, twisting it effortlessly, slamming him against the wall with one arm. His grip firm on the boy's jaw. His voice was, "Apologize to Clara for the low temperature. The sun's rays that day seemed gentler, warming the inn that little mundane instant when I detected the subtle aroma of new grass, an unanticipated fluffa. Even though it was just 2 o'clock in the morning, my heart was pounding and my pillow was wet with tears when I woke up. Standing up, I poured a drink for myself. Of water. When I heard something outside, I opened the door. Daniel was there. He leaned against his car, looking worn-out, cigarette butts scattered at his feet. The chilly wind had taken the color from his expressionless face, gave him an air of fragility, as he initially failed to meet my gaze. His eyes grew increasingly piercing as he laid eyes on me. Speechless, I shut the door and climbed back into bed, my heart beating steadily. Pause. Relax. Then my phone rang. "I'm sorry about Peter. I've severed all connections with him." "I ended things with Monica," he said, pausing as if he were unsure of what to type next. "Clara, I won't bother you again." I could always count on Daniel to be waiting for me when I returned home after my downstairs adventures. He had made himself at home. Night. He was still there like a shadow that wouldn't fade. I ignored him, so did my mom. She shrugged one evening, although mentioning that individuals should value themselves, it is impossible to prevent a dog from protecting its owner's home. Almost as an afterthought, she added, "Not that this is his house, you broke up with him, remember?" Meanwhile, my Becky and I were more busy than ever before as our careers were really taking off. We were landing little ad deals and experiencing we were in a continual state of meeting, riding the wave of energy, continuously coming up with fresh ideas for content. I was careening around after work one evening when a passing bicycle grazed my leg. The cut wasn't deep, but it was gushing blood. Becky hurried over to steady me as the liquid flowed down my calf, asking whether I was okay before I could react. Brian had already rushed off. He returned back, breathless arms full of bandages, antiseptics, and gauze. Becky couldn't resist mocking him. Laughing at Brian's bright eyes were fixed on mine as he made his dramatic entrance, his chest still thumping. "Hey, what can I do to assist you?" he whispered. Cleaning the wound, I ended up accepting his offer, deciding to sit on a nearby bench and clean the cut myself later since Brian insisted on taking me home when filming concluded up earlier than anticipated. He drove nervously at a snake's pace. I didn't confront him because he was staring around as if the car were going to explode. The journey normally took 30 minutes. After what felt like an eternity, we finally arrived, and he hurried over to unlock my door, his hand instinctively reaching for assist me as I stepped outside. I thanked them with a smile, but as I shifted my focus to as I stumbled down the stairs, Daniel leaned against the wall, his vacant, restless eyes fixed on me. His face was pale, lip opening slightly as if to speak, but no words came. Then he began to approach me, and Brian saw a change in my expression. He spoke more softly to Clara, asking, "Is that someone you—" I took Brian's hand without batting an eye at Daniel since I didn't like his answer, and walked right past him, but Daniel reached out his fingers catching the hem of my jacket. I stopped my gaze calm and oblivious as it hit him. It was a shock. He sprang to his feet, letting go, and his gaze shifted to, "Are you okay?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above my bandaged leg. Again, without saying a word, the door slammed shut in his face. No. Only a conclusion that came to pass long before the door was closed. I heard sounds coming from the kitchen when my mom saw Brian. Her eyes lit up with excitement. "It's so great to see you," Brian hesitated, looking over at her with a hint of warmth before she asked him to remain for dinner. My mom has been eagerly anticipating our reunion, so I nodded in her direction to reassure her. I inquired as we entered, and his smile blossomed into a genuine one, with dimples just visible at the corners of his mouth. He responded as he took off his shoes. "Aren't you curious about who that was just now? It doesn't matter." Then he leaned in, slightly lowering his voice, his breath warm against my ear. "You said he's someone you hate. That means he's not important anymore." I met his gentle gaze. I felt a slight flush run down my cheeks, but I remained silent after dinner. By the time we got to the car, it was well past 10. My mom and I escorted him to the door, but Daniel, her smile disappeared as soon as we opened it. My mom's voice became more harsh as she asked, "What are you doing here, Daniel?" I stood there like a shadow that wouldn't go away, brought his hand up in a feeble hello as he met Brian's gaze with an uneasy smile. Moved over to Dan, who paused for a while before letting out a barely audible laugh as he noticed Brian told me tomorrow that his voice will be light, and I nodded and wished him good night. But then without warning, he reached for my hand before I could respond. He pulled me into a gently cautious hug light as a feather, like he was afraid I'd break his lips, brushed close to my ear. "Sorry, Clara," he whispered gently. "This is simply a friendly embrace, if that's acceptable." I muttered. However, you had already done it without his knowledge or consent, and before he could answer, Daniel violently removed him by grabbing his collar with force. His body froze in midair as he clenched his fist like a feral animal about to lose control. "Daniel." I spoke to him in a harsh, angry voice. "Motion." His hand trembling slightly, his eyes were crimson, filled with something I couldn't comprehend. This was the same man whom before had no qualms about letting me go, was now crumbling under the weight of guilt that Brian had previously dismissed. Daniel grasped with a bitter laugh, fixing his collar. "Should we contact the cops?" he asked, staring at me. "Daniel." His voice pierced through Clara, who was visibly shaken and anxious. "Might he be your my lover, Daniel?" I remember he mumbled something about being lost, and my voice was frigid as I stared at him. We split up. Agitated, his tears poured freely now, staining his cheeks. His words fumbled out dirty and rough, but I regret it. I regret everything, Clara. I immediately end our conversation. I have no regrets about abandoning you or my decision to leave Los Angeles, and I will never, ever look back. I took a long breath, my voice steady and final. Whether the person I intend to spend the rest of my life with is unrelated to you. I am in a relationship with someone else. The spark that ignited in his eyes was the instant I realized he would never be my life partner. Fragile, flickering hope died completely that night. Daniel didn't wait outside. After a considerable amount of time had elapsed, I finally got a message from him one evening. It had been 2 months since the last time we saw each other. "Clara, can we meet one last time, just to say goodbye this time?" The world went silent as snow began to fall outside, so I said, "Okay." Obliviously, yet another year was winding down, bringing with it a cap, and when I first met Daniel, it was at a little cafe close by. Thick snow had accumulated on the ground, the floor unspoiled and immaculate, with icy patches still visible beneath the clean sidewalks. The winter sun as I walked, I nudged a chunk of snow with my foot, It crumbled easily, scattering into powder, and for a brief moment I laughed, genuinely enjoying the simple fleeting joy that winter always brought me. But my laughter quickly subsided as I beheld Daniel standing nearby, his intense stare fixed on me for an instant. It felt like I'd been pulled back to high school, snow falling softly, cold air biting my cheeks. Back then I loved making. When kicking snowballs as hard as I could almost hear his voice from the past as I watched them explode apart. I turned around and laughed as the voice boomed from the open window. "Lunch is ready!" I walked toward the house, my spirit lifted and my burdens released, but alas, today was not that day. As I drew near, Daniel let out a gentle breath. His voice had a hint of melancholy as he whispered into the chilly air, and for a moment I believed we were right back where we had been. He then smiled hollowly, but this time it had a bittersweet undertone. As a farewell, we spent an entire table across from one another after years of space between us. I simply stated, I ordered coffee, glanced at the clock, and only have an hour. He nodded, his fingers fidgeting restlessly against the edge of the table. About the journal, he began, his voice slow. "I'm sorry, I really am. I'm not put off by it any longer." My comments were cool and collected. His fingers remained motionless, and for a moment he looked like he was struggling to find the right words. If he started, his voice faltering, I had no idea where that journal was. Would we still be in touch? Finally calmed down. Even without the diary, we wouldn't have survived. His words trailed off as he spoke again, leaving us both bewildered. In hushed tones, he whispered, "There's something about your face that I just don't get. After all these years of being together, why don't you give me another opportunity? I have something to ask you," and I buried the truth when I said it. I felt a surge of frustration building up in my chest as I asked Daniel, "Why did you even get involved with me?" He chose to remain silent, prompting me to settle a debt. I took his call, describing the ludicrousness of the situation and what led to. I smiled artificially cold and sharp at you because I knew you were right. "What gave you the idea that your love for me was a gift?" I confessed because I liked you, but the reality is that I had already went on with my life. Saving you that day wasn't a great sacrifice. I did it because we were both aware. I stirred my coffee, the sound of clinking being very faint. But if it had been anyone else, I would have done the same. I would have quickly adjusted if you hadn't given me false hope afterwards. Instead, I laughed bitterly and hollowly. I set the spoon down and glanced at him as I began anew. I had been nice to you because I believed you deserved it. Even without you, I would still be here today, Daniel, because love is beautiful, but it can't destroy a person's life. That you passed up numerous opportunities to tell me you didn't love me is all that matters to me. Worst decision ever. You cheated us into being together and squandered 7 years of your life. And you wasted 7 years of mine. Daniel shot up from his seat, eyes wild with panic, mouth opening like he wanted to explain, but unable to find the words. His eyes glistened as he squeezed them shut. "It's not like that. You didn't realize your own feelings." I asked, my tone flat. He nodded slowly. I laughed again, this time louder. "My mom used to tell me, don't waste time on people you don't like, focus on those who matter. That's why I never fought with you about Peter, 1, because I didn't care about his opinions, and 2, because I didn't want to make you unhappy. That's love. Love is obvious. It's clear I loved you, so I wanted to treat you well, but your love, I couldn't feel it." Daniel had no response. If I hadn't found that journal and we'd gotten married, you would have grown resentful. You'd feel trapped, like you were forced into it. By some moral obligation, we would have been miserable, and you still don't get that. Do you even, after all this time, the emo were still there? Faint echoes that refused to fade completely. Our breakup wasn't because of the journal repeater. It was because of your arrogance disguised as kindness. You thought you were being noble, but all you did was belittle me. I stood grabbing my bag. Daniel scrambled up too, his face tense with regret, but I'm not blameless either. I added softly, "My mistake was not walking away sooner. I should have realized it was over when you let your friends treat me like I was nothing and you did nothing about it." I took a deep breath. This is the last time we'll ever see each other. I'm only here out of respect for Emma. I turned to leave, not sparing him another glance. Leeton, never meet again. Daniel, as I pushed open the cafe door, my phone rang, Becky's name flashing on the screen. Done yet? We're waiting for you at dinner if you don't get here soon. Brian's going to come looking for you. I smiled, the tension slipping away like melting snow on my way. I replied. In March, I received a special request from a little girl. The weather was still cold, a biting chill lingering in the air. Yet she wore thin, worn-out clothes. Her left eye was unusual, clouded like she might be blind in it. She stopped us on the street, her small voice filled with hesitation. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly. "But I heard your videos are about making friends. I'd like to make a friend." Becky and I gently asked her a few questions, and that's how we learned her name was Sunny. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was very young, and she'd been raised by her grandmother ever since. But her grandmother was cruel, constantly calling her a bad omen, ignoring her, treating her left eye like it was some kind of curse at school. Things weren't any better. The kids bullied her relentlessly. "No one likes me," she whispered, her gaze falling to the ground. Her words stuck with me, lingering long after we parted. Because of her request, we started visiting different elementary schools around town searching. Eventually, we met Angela, a bright, bubbly girl with a smile as warm as the sun fitting. Really, since she'd be the light Sunny desperately needed when the day of their meeting arrived? Angela couldn't contain her excitement. She skipped and hopped the whole way, her parents trailing behind with amused, affectionate smiles. Angela's been looking forward to this for days. Her mother said she's been counting down the hours, just wanting to meet her new friend. Hearing that filled me with warmth, a rare, genuine sense of purpose. When the girls finally met, it didn't take more than 15 minutes for them to click like they'd known each other forever. Angela leaned in, her expression serious but filled with sincerity. "Your eye isn't ugly at all. The people who said that they just don't have good taste from today on." "I'm your friend," I found myself speaking before I even realized it. "And I'm your friend too." Becky chimed in, her voice soft and warm. "Me too." Angela's mom knelt down, gently patting Sunny's head. "Our house isn't far from yours. If you ever miss Angela, come over. I'll bake you cookies," as we said our goodbyes. I turned to Sunny, crouching to meet her gaze. "Don't pay too much attention to what people who don't like you say. They're not important. What matters is that you know who you are." I thought of a line I'd read in a book by Sophie Tanner. "I choose to be my own closest lover. My most loyal comrade, due self-respect, self-love, self-confidence. May it last a lifetime, unwavering to the end." Sunny didn't fully understand, I could tell. But that was okay. I pulled her into a gentle hug, her small frame fitting perfectly in my arms. "Sweetheart, you are a wonderful, wonderful person." When it came time to edit the video, I didn't post it right away. "I'm not done." I told Becky there's still one more thing I need to film. One last surprise while I was editing the video that night. I heard the sound of a car outside. My phone buzzed. It was Brian. "Clara, come outside. I've got a gift for you." We hadn't seen each other for almost a week. He'd recently started a new job, one that required him to travel abroad for business. He'd been incredibly busy when I went downstairs. He was standing by his car, the trunk wide open the moment he saw me. He waved me over inside. The trunk were all sorts of snacks he'd collected from abroad. He shoved a few boxes into my arms while juggling the rest in his own. His voice casual, playful. "Well, these are for a regular friend," he said with a grin. I couldn't help but laugh. He nodded toward the door. "Lead the way, friend." Our relationship had never crossed that invisible line, and he never seemed to mind. But this time, I couldn't hold back the question that had been lingering in my mind. "Did you maybe like me back then?" I asked, half teasing, half curious. He chuckled, stepping a little closer. "I didn't even know what that meant at the time," he admitted. "I just really wanted to be your friend. But then you moved to LA, and honestly, I was pretty heartbroken back then." Brian had been a skinny, shy kid, always walking with his head down, and Clara, had held my head high, defiant, refusing to bow to the cruelty thrown my way. Teenage Brian had thought I really want to be Clara's friend, but he never took that step when he found out I was leaving. He'd cried alone in his room. What he never told me was that when he was 23, we'd crossed paths briefly because of a work project. I didn't recognize him, but he recognized me later. After clashing with his company's leadership, he quit and returned to our hometown when he heard I was back too. The first thing he did was reach out because he still wanted to be my friend. But getting to know me again, the real me, the grown me, he realized it was more than just friendship. Now it wasn't love at first sight, it was something that had been planted long ago, a seed from middle school that had quietly taken root, growing stronger with time. I was stunned. I never imagined. I whispered that someone back then actually wanted to be my friend. Brian rested his chin on his hand, tilting his head slightly as he looked at me. "You shine on your own," he said softly. "People who are on the same wavelength can't help but be drawn to you." Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just life circling us back to each other. After all these years, I told him let's take things slow, and he smiled as if that was exactly what he hoped for, because he never liked rushing into anything, especially not love B. After parting ways with Clara at the cafe, Daniel never messaged her again. The weight of their years together now reduced to nothing more than a painful memory, a dull ache that gripped his chest every time he thought of her. But the person responsible for that pain was him. After Peter's confrontation with Clara, Daniel had exploded, their argument escalating into a full-blown fight. He couldn't understand Peter's relentless malice towards her, the way he latched onto her like a dog that refused to let go. It wasn't until Peter snapped in frustration, shouting, "Then go win her back. What's so great about her hometown anyway? Why would she want to stay there?" that Daniel sensed something different. His eyes narrowed. "You like her?" Peter's body stiffened, his usual smirk, faltering for the briefest second before he forced a scoff. "Me like that fat pig, you've got to be kidding." But Daniel cut him off, his voice flat, certain. "You like her." The words hung in the air, undeniable. Peter stopped pretending. He let out a bitter, broken laugh, his defenses crumbling. "Yeah, so what? Maybe if she didn't look at me like I'm trash, like I don't even exist, I wouldn't have treated her the way I did. If she just shown me a little kindness, I wouldn't have." Daniel stared at him, stunned, not because Peter had feelings for Clara, but because he'd let someone like Peter poison her life for years and done nothing to stop it. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. "You know what's funny?" Daniel said quietly, his voice dripping with contempt. "She hates you." Peter's bitter laugh turned sharp. "Defensive, doesn't she hate you too?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "I'm not like you. We had something real." Peter's smile faded. He leaned in slightly, his words like a knife to Clara. "You're no different from me now." Daniel didn't respond because deep down he knew Peter was right. Still, he packed up his guilt, his regret, and followed her to her hometown like an addict desperate for one last fix. He lingered outside her building, waiting, hoping for something, anything. He wanted to tell Clara he loved her, that he'd broken up with Monica because he never loved her. That maybe they could start over, but Clara never gave him that chance. She hated him just as much as she hated Peter. After she left the cafe that day, Daniel sat alone for hours staring at nothing. The emptiness inside him louder than any words she'd spoken when he finally walked out. He felt lost, truly lost. There was no direction to go because there was no home anymore, not without Clara. He threw himself into work, convincing himself he didn't care, but the body keeps score eventually. The exhaustion caught up with him and he collapsed, waking up in a hospital bed surrounded by nothing but sterile walls and the echo of a name he'd never stop hearing in his mind. Clara. In the sterile quiet of the hospital room, Daniel reached for his phone. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened Clara's social media account. There was her latest video. He pressed play. The screen, illuminating his tired face, casting shadows under his hollow eyes. Toward the end of the video, there was a surprise clip, a heartfelt message, a bonus she'd recorded. Her voice was soft but steady, filled with warmth that cut through him like glass. To the dear girl watching this. "Hello, what are you doing right now? Are you gazing toward the future or chasing after your dreams? Are you a student, an adult, a mother? Are you happy? Are you okay? No matter who you are, I just want to tell you this. You're amazing." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry, as if every word she spoke carved another line into his heart. "I used to be a weightlifter." Clara continued. "I had a strong, muscular body and appearance that the world didn't find pretty. I've heard people whisper, belittle, judge, but none of that defines me. When I was younger, I always wanted to stand tall, my back straight, my head held high. I used to think, what do they know? I could spend days, months, years training, gaining weight, pushing limits. Of course I should be proud of myself, and just like that. I hope you feel proud of yourself too. Daniel's chest tightened, his mind flashed with memories. Clara's determined eyes, her defiant smile, the way she carried herself with strength, even when the world tried to chip away at her. After college, I worked in sales for a few years when I decided to quit. I struggled with self-doubt, but I did it anyway. I went back home to rest, to breathe, and that's when I realized something important. Life is far more forgiving than we think. When you realize you've taken the wrong path, it's okay to turn around. Starting over isn't failure, it's courage. If you've made it this far, thank you for sharing this journey with me. Sometimes we have to go through the hardest moments in life to discover who we truly are and what we deserve. I hope this story resonates with anyone who's ever felt lost or trapped, but found their way back to themselves. Remember, love shouldn't be a burden. It should lift you up. If you've been through something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories and honest conversations. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep growing, because the best is yet to come.